Pinayagan ng inyong IATF na lumabas sa outdoor areas ang mga bata, ang ating mga chikiting, no, na may edad 5 taon at pataas sa ilalim ng Modified General Community Quarantine or General Community Quarantine liban sa mga heightened restrictions. Dagdag pa rito, ang mga bata ay kinakailangan na babantayan ng mga adults at kinakailangan rin nilang mag-observe ng minimum public health standards na tulad ng pagsusuot ng face mask at social distancing. Maaring taasan ng local government units ang nasabing age restrictions ng mga bata ayon sa COVID-19 situation sa kanilang lugar.
Of course, that was Pala spokesman Harry Roque announcing the IATF's decision to allow minors aged 5 years old and up in GCQ and MGCQ areas to get out of their homes.
Outdoor areas such as beaches, parks, and playgrounds may now welcome kids, but mixed-use indoor facilities like malls are still off limits for minors. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Ed Lingao. You're watching The Big Story. We begin tonight with the government lifting its stay-at-home rules for children aged 5 years old and older, at least in areas under GCQ and MGCQ.
This makes destinations like Baguio City more family-friendly, as the LGU also relaxes its rules for fully vaccinated adult tourists. To tell us more, we have Laila Panghilinan reporting live from the City of Pines. Laila, is this welcome news for the Baguio City LGU?
Ed, Gretchen, despite the non-stop mutations of the COVID-19 virus, the IATF has finally allowed children to leave their homes subject to some restrictions. But here in Baguio City, the LGU has been allowing kids outdoors since October last year.
Under the new IATF rules, children in areas under GCQ and MGCQ will be allowed in parks, playgrounds, beaches, biking and hiking trails, outdoor tourist sites, outdoor non-contact sport courts, and alfresco dining venues. But since October last year, the City of Pines has eased restrictions on children, since the city is a popular family destination.
For kids, it's not mandatory. And we had the clearance from our health sector and health officers here. But yung mobility nila mas restricted ng konti. No? We impose restrictions sa mga crowded areas like markets, groceries, indoor activities.
Kids here are allowed to bike and ride giant swans at Burnham Park or take pony rides at Wright Park. Those accompanied by fully vaccinated adults from MGCQ and GCQ areas don't even have to present RT-PCR or antigen test results. Tourists entering the City of Pines are even allowed entry just by presenting their vaccination cards. The Baguio Tourism Office believes this would encourage more Filipinos to get vaccinated. Before heading to Baguio, travelers must register online via the Visita Baguio website for a QR-coded tourist pass. The LGU is limiting allowed tourists to only 3,000 per day. All of them have to undergo triage upon arrival in Baguio.
That is where what they have entered online, the health declaration, the documents will be validated. That sabi nga nila, some documents might be falsified, baka there will be proliferation of fake documents. So that is our actually second line of defense.
Once approved, a triage pass will be handed out to allow tourists to check in. Despite these requirements, tourists are glad that travel has become more convenient, especially for kids.
We were very happy to know na vaccine card lang yung kailangan namin pakita and we are all vaccinated na kasi.
Ang galing-galing ni Baguio!
Very happy kami.
But the palace still has a reminder for minors who are excited to go out.
Dagdag pa rito, ang mga bata ay kinakailangan na babantayan ng mga adults at kinakailangan rin nilang mag-observe ng minimum public health standards. Maaring taasan ng local government units ang nasabing age restrictions ng mga bata ayon sa COVID-19 situation sa kanilang lugar.
Ed, Gretchen, the Baguio City LGU warns tourists to not fake their documents like the swab test results and vaccination cards because these are subject to criminal offenses. Also, the government has reminded kids that even though they are allowed outdoors, they are still not allowed in mixed areas or mixed facilities like malls. That's the latest here in Baguio. Back to you, Gretchen and Ed.
Laila Pangilinan reporting live from Baguio City. Thank you, Laila. And to talk more about the new IATF order, joining us tonight, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere. Yusek Vergere, thank you for joining us and welcome back.
Yes, good evening, sir, at magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, regarding this order of the IATF, of course, it is a major step, but is there any special precaution that people have to take with children outdoors, given the fact that they are children and that they are not yet vaccinated?
Of course, the safeguard should be there. That's why when we have recommended this to the IATF, the safeguards were also mentioned and were emphasized. First, that the children would be supervised by their caregivers or their parents. Then second, the wearing of the mask. That's why the age cutoff was at 5 years old and above, because according to WHO, this would be the most appropriate age that could really wear the mask and can verbalize already if they are having a difficult time breathing because of the mask.
Okay. Ma'am, what about vaccination for children? Are we anywhere near that phase when we can already start vaccination of children from any age?
The manufacturers like Pfizer already has this EUA for children 12 years old and above. And also now there are other manufacturers applying for the EUA for children younger even than 12 years old. But we need to look at our supplies also, and we need to look at the risk because we're prioritizing because of our supplies currently. And we need to stabilize the supplies before we can go and recommend that children can be vaccinated, because we know and we see in the evidence that children are the least risk of getting infected and having the severe forms of the infection.
Ma'am, let me push the question further. Of course, again, a major step here in allowing kids to go out finally. But what about the next step, which would probably be face-to-face classes in one form or the other? Is that coming anytime soon?
Yes, actually, this is one of the things that we are doing so that we can prepare and see how this is going to turn out, because we're already starting to discuss and prepare for the pilot face-to-face classes come September. So this is already being discussed among the IATF officials and the different concerned national government agencies as to the opening of these pilot classes or pilot schools that will be included maybe by September once IATF approves of this.
Okay. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere, ma'am, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And just how much of a concern is COVID-19 infection among this younger age group? Let's look at tonight's big number, 4.6%. This is the combined percentage of children aged 5 to 14 who contracted COVID-19 in the country based on the DOH's COVID tracker as of July 8. While this rate is lower compared to that of adults, the Octa Research Group notes the increasing number of cases among minors below 17 years old. The group says aside from Delta, the country has to look out for the other variants which are still transmissible to children.
These are the other big stories tonight. The health department says all countries are vulnerable to the Delta variant. That's after JP Morgan named the Philippines as one of the 5 economies most vulnerable to the infectious variant. For the first time, Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte has expressed openness to run for president in 2022. But she said there's no final decision yet. And as expected, BTS is breaking records once again. The global sensation released a music video of their new full English record, Permission to Dance. These big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. The Interagency Task Force is giving LGUs the discretion on whether or not fully vaccinated travelers still need to present negative swab test results. Some LGUs are not taking a chance and still want RT-PCR tests as a travel requirement. JC Cosico with the story.
Vaccination data right at your fingertips. This is the goal of the government's vaccination verification system. It will collate information on the country's vaccinees and make mobility more seamless. The Health Department expects the system to help weed out counterfeit vaccination cards being used.
Yung sa DICT na gagawin, it's digitized. Nasa telepono lang po natin, meron lang po tayong parang application at nandun na po yung inyong vaccination card which can be verified by scanning the QR code.
But while such technology is not yet available, LGUs are instructed to submit a list of vaccinated individuals per day. The DOH also urges the use of security features in the vaccination cards being issued, such as in Makati. The city's vaccination card features a QR code and is printed on a special paper that shows the city's seal if lit with ultraviolet light.
Yung sa Makati, that's a good practice, no? So we really need to use technology so that it's going to be tamper-proof, hindi po na na-fake, ma-verify agad.
But some LGUs like in Aklan still require RT-PCR tests for those entering Boracay. Aklan Mayor Frolibar Bautista says there are still instances of people trying to get away with fake vaccination cards.
Nakatutan namin dito, ma'am, kasi baka makalusot na mayroong mga tourist or sino man makapasok ng Boracay na hindi naman na ako say tampered yung city card nila, yung delikado yun. So yun lang, nananiguro lang kami, ma'am, na dapat ngayon today dapat PCR test muna ng positive bago sila pumasok ng Boracay.
Mayor Bautista says this is an added layer of protection against the spread of COVID-19, especially since Boracay's tourism has yet to fully recover. Before the pandemic, 6,000 tourists visit Boracay daily. Now, this has been reduced to at least 1,000. The IATF leaves it up to LGUs if they will require a negative RT-PCR test result before allowing entry. For News 5, JC Cosico, We Are One News.
A study by JP Morgan shows that the Philippines is among the top 5 economies most vulnerable to the Delta variant. Others included in the list are Peru, Colombia, South Africa, and Thailand. JP Morgan says the pace of vaccinations in these countries may not be enough to control the spread of the more infectious variant. The study says this could pressure governments to extend restrictions which may hurt the economy. In response, the Health Department says all countries are vulnerable to variants.
We use kung anumang datos ang meron dyan so that we can improve. Dahil hindi naman talaga tayo perfecto. We are trying to intensify all of our controls para ma-contain po natin, ma-prevent po natin ang pagpasok ng variant na ito sa ating mga komunidad.
I'm Gretchen Ho, your Woman in Action. Quezon City has made a lot of progress in establishing bike lanes, and that is where we went for Bike for Livelihood's third stop. A look at the city's efforts for inclusive streets in my report. Instead of food, this bike community pantry along Commonwealth Avenue gives bike parts and services for free. Quezon City riders formed the group Bikers United Movement to deliver an important mission: protect bikers on the road.
Nakita namin yung need to protect the bikers on the road, especially yung mga newbies. Talagang namimigay na kami ng vests, ng helmet, tapos namimigay rin kami ng free bike parts.
And their efforts have not gone to waste because the Quezon City LGU, with the help of Bikers United Movement, has put up a total of 93 kilometers in bike lanes and hired about 90 bike patrollers, all during the pandemic.
Dumami talaga yung mga nagbabike dito. Mga additional watch over, yung additional protection. Talagang makakawawa yung mga bikers.
And so, Bike for Livelihood made QC its third stop. Team Woman in Action and the MVP Group Foundations donated 60 bicycles, helmets, and vests. along with 15 smartphones and 15 pocket Wi-Fis. Maynilad will also be installing water fountains for cyclists in designated areas. Bikers United Movement also gave a bike safety seminar for our new cyclists, while Smart Communications taught recipients how to maximize their gadgets for livelihood.
5G ready yung mga phones na binibigay namin para dun sa mga negosyante natin na gusto mag-e-commerce. We're helping them with these connectivity tools.
Jeriel Bislig, a 26-year-old criminology student, will use the new bike as he sells taho.
Magagamit ko po yung bike pag pinalagyan ko ng sidecar kasi hirap na rin po sa pagbubuhat. Cellphone ko, magagamit ko po yun para sa pag-aaral ko.
For community health worker Christina Kapinig, having a bike will help her save up.
Magkano ang pamasahe? Papunta pa lang 40 pesos. How much pagbalik mo pa? 80 pesos isang araw. So, malaking tulong tong binigay sa amin na bike.
While for balut vendor Efren, it's just about experiencing some relief.
Ngayon, may bike na ako. Dito ko na ilalagay yung bike, yung balot ko sa likod ko. Saka sa chicharon, nandito na.
Kaya ako ay labis na natutuwa at nagpapasalamat sa MVP Group of Companies. Cycling will make the roads, make our city more democratic. And sa phase 2 pa ng project na to, we intend to build another 54 to 84 additional bike lanes.
Just like in a bicycle, we keep pedaling to make sure the ride for safer, more inclusive streets continues. One road, one bike lane, one bicycle at a time. Gretchen Ho, we are One News. Bike for Livelihoods' next stop will be in Malabon this weekend. Time for another quick break. When we return, 2 local major leagues are finally making a comeback this July. Both the PBA and the PBL have secured approval to begin games later this month. And global pop sensation BTS gives a hopeful glimpse of a maskless future via their new single Permission to Dance. A look at their music video after the break.
The music's got me going, nothing I can stop how we move. Let's break our plans and live just like we're golden, rolling like we're dancing
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. Fishing, and we are not talking about seafood, is now the top cybercrime in the country. It's an issue amplified by the pandemic, which has forced us to do most things online. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez will give us a front seat to the story.
"33-year-old accountant Carmina de la Paz didn't think she could ever be a victim of fraud. But that's exactly what happened. Sometime last year, she got an email from what she thought was her bank, asking her to update her number to avoid account closure. She then got a one-time password, which she typed down as well. Next thing she knew, someone had transferred 50,000 pesos out of her account. She filed a dispute, but in the end, because she had given out the OTP, the bank said she was liable.
Nalulumo ako, tsaka yung mister ko kasi hindi naman madaling ipunin yun, knowing na pandemic pa, diba?
Amid the pandemic, phishing has become the top cybercrime in the country, followed by online selling scams and misinformation. According to the NBI Cybercrime Division, phishing complaints have increased by 200% since lockdowns began in March 2020. Phishing happens mostly in 2 ways: through websites that mimic legitimate banks, and more recently, by scammers calling people pretending to be bank representatives. In both cases, the goal is to get people to give out user data, especially that all-important OTP. BPI says before the pandemic, they were used to seeing 50 to 70 phishing websites created in a month. Last year, the number shot up to as much as 600 sites a month.
And it has actually become more prevalent and more damaging than it was before.
Surprisingly, majority of their clients who fell prey to scams are younger and generally more tech-savvy. They're also appealing to customers to do their part.
At the end of the day, it's really the customer and how aware, how careful they are.
Scams might take many forms, but the outcome is always the same: to steal money from people. And while mobile banking is the norm in these trying times, we must keep in mind that data protection is a shared responsibility between the bank and the client. I'm Pamela Vasquez and we are One News.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on print and online. The Freeman reports that Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte is open to running for president next year. Mayor Sara said this on her visit to the Cebu provincial capital to meet with Governor Gwen Garcia. But the presidential daughter said there is no final decision yet. She did say, however, that she asked Garcia's permission to return to Cebu with her party, Hugpong ng Pagbabago. Non-performing loans continue to rise in May, bringing banks' NPL ratio to its highest in 13 years. Business World reports that gross NPL ratio surged 4.49%, matching the record high back in 2008 during the global financial crisis. Analysts attribute the continued rise of bad loans to pandemic uncertainties and lockdowns weighing down on borrowers. The Armed Forces of the Philippines has identified one other victim from the C-130 crash, bringing the number of identified bodies to 20. News 5 reports that the body of Airman First Class Fortunate or Fortunate Regidor is now being prepared for transport after being identified. The bodies of 29 other casualties are undergoing examination and preservation in different facilities in Zamboanga. Meanwhile, the remains of 3 other victims in the C-130 crash have arrived in Villamor Air Base aboard the C-295 aircraft. For the big story in sports, the Premier Volleyball League is all set to open its maiden professional season on July 17 in a bubble in Ilocos Norte. This is after the PVL secured the nod from Ilocos Norte Provincial Government, the regional IATF, and the Games and Amusement Board. However, only 10 teams from the original 12 will participate in its maiden season as a professional league. This is after the F2 Logistics Cargo Movers begged off from participating in the upcoming season. The team cited logistical problems and injuries for its withdrawal, but said that it is preparing for the next conference. Meanwhile, another league that is set to make its return is the PBA. The league has secured approval from the IATF to start its 2021 season on July 16. Commissioner Willie Marshall said that the 2021 season will see 2 conference run until January 2022.
No permission needed indeed. Global sensation BTS has released a new single, Permission to Dance. This is their 3rd full-length English language single after their record-breaking hits Butter and Dynamite. The music video visualizes life after the COVID-19 pandemic, with a cowboy-dressed BTS member signaling the end to the health crisis with purple balloons. The color purple is closely associated with the group and its fans. The video now had more than 27 million views in just 5 hours. Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter Ed Sheeran helped pen Permission to Dance. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
In Isabela, a woman has just turned Taylor Swift's love story around as she herself proposes to her boyfriend of 8 years. Let's see how she knelt to the ground, pulled out a ring, and said, "Marry me, Romeo."
Ang cute.
Ang haba ng buhok ng lalaki. No?
Napakanta ako dun eh. Marry me, Juliet. Alam mo yung
Pero hindi ka
kanta?
napakanta doon sa BTS.
Hindi ako masyadong aware kasi sa BTS. Fan ako ng SB19.
Ano yun?
Parang ganun, parang yung P-pop. Oo, maganda mga kanta nila.
Okay,
Ikaw
sige.
naman, ikaw naman na kung meron tayong Taylor Swift, BTS, SB19, what would be your favorite?
John Taylor? Let's not talk about these things.
It's the weekend.
I'm certain there are more important things to talk about than this.
That
Sige ba,
wraps
it's
up
weekend.
today's big story. Catch us again on Monday at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on
Wash hands.
and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Ed Lingao.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.